And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome to Open Connection. I'm your host, Robert Pictou. Our show today comes to you from the traditional and unceded territory of the Tsimshian people. The Northwest economy traditionally has been based on natural resource extraction, which has generated a tremendous amount of wealth for the province. However, the region has a long history of boom and bust, and the infrastructure is aging. On today's Open Connection, we begin with an announcement from Minister Anne Kang.
Building strong, sustainable economy is a priority to our government. And British Columbia is an incredible place that we call home. And as a recent BC Stats report confirms, our province is experiencing its highest population growth in 50 years. And we need to be prepared to embrace all the opportunities that come with that growth, not just in our largest urban regions, but also in our regional centers and resource communities. We are listening to rural voices to ensure that we are all working together to address the challenges Northwest communities are facing. And we are committed to ensuring that people in Northern BC have the services they need to support economic growth in their communities. Now, it's my great pleasure to invite someone who does not need any introduction at all, Premier David Eby, to the podium to discuss how we're supporting people living in the Northwest.
My colleagues behind me, Anne Kang, Nathan Cull, and Jen Rice, have been advocating for this day and working to get it done for a long time. I want to thank them right off the hop for their amazing work on this. Now, absolutely.
Yeah.
Now, I know I've heard the rumors, and I just want to say it's not true. I do not prefer the city of Terrace just because City Hall is on Eby Street. That is completely incorrect. But I do have a special place in my heart for Terrace and for the Northwest generally. It is a beautiful and amazing part of our province. Every time I visit here, the people are so welcoming, so kind. The people here are independent, entrepreneurial, they're fierce, and they're friendly and welcoming. And it is a great place to put down roots. One of my wife's good friends, post-medical school, she and her family moved to Terrace because they love the outdoor lifestyle and they love being here, and happily they are both doctors. And so I know the attraction of this part of the world for so many people. One of the realities, though, of the shifting nature of BC's economy and how it works is that resource development in the Northwest and the fact that this is big part of the economic engine of our province is taking place outside of the centers where people live. The tax base for the major employers is not connected at all to the cities and the communities where people who work there live. And that disconnect has meant that prosperity is being generated in this part of the world, but that the cities and the communities that host the people who generate that prosperity haven't shared in it in the way that they should have. And that means difficult conversations with mayors and the provincial government. You know, we set up a growing communities fund, $1 billion for municipalities across the province to support them with critical infrastructure that they need. And I sat down with Mayor Bouitache and I said, Sean, this has got to be so exciting for you and Terrace. You know, you got this money. What are you going to do with the money? And he said, we're going to cap our landfill. I was like, what? Oh, that's so heartbreaking. Here's some money that other communities are able to use for community centers, for arenas, for parks, for amenities. And Terrace's situation, because the people who live here work in industry that's located outside of the city and the tax base is not here, it means that you've got to use the money to cap the landfill. When I met with Mayor Pond and talked about the situation of the water pipes in Prince Rupert, you know, I met the guy who spent Christmas, instead of spending Christmas with his family, he spent Christmas saving the water system about a year and a half ago in Prince Rupert from total collapse. This is the one of the major ports in North America. This is a massive economic driver of not just the Northwest, not just the province of BC, but the entire country. And the water system almost collapsed because the pipes are so old that they leak. And when they leak quickly, if the water level drops, the pipes will just collapse flat and the whole water system is done. So that is the state of infrastructure and the challenges that have faced local government leaders here for far, far too long. And it was very obvious to me as my colleagues came and pointed out these things again and again that we needed to do something to fix it. And that's what today's announcement is about.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Thank you for staying with us. The Northwest BC Resource Benefits Alliance was formed in 2014 and is an association of all 21 local governments in Northwest BC. The RBA was formed to negotiate a new funding agreement with the provincial government to ensure Northwest BC can manage and service infrastructure deficits resulting from economic development in the region. Let us return to the conversation as Premier Eby makes an announcement.
Budget 2024 allocates $250 million, $250 million annually to the RBA. Budget 2024 allocates $250 million to the RBA. Over 5 years. I looked way too happy. For roads, sewers, drinking water, all the things that support the people that live in the communities that help make our province go. We're supporting residents here. We're supporting a major economic engine for our province, the people of the Northwest. I'd like to thank the mayors for their advocacy on this. I still, when I see them even today, I'm like, oh God, they're going to ask me about RBA. It will pass eventually. Together, we're ensuring that people get the services they rely on here in the Northwest and right across the province. I'll just close by saying I met William and Austin just before we came out here. They're studying heavy-duty mechanics here at the college. They're in grade 12, and they're dividing their time between their high school studies, working at heavy-duty mechanic shops in the community, and here at the college. Now, if these guys are any indication of the future of the Northwest, we're in good hands, and it's supporting them when they're putting down roots here, when they want to start families, that they have amazing communities that are strong and resilient. That's what our government's all about, and we're so glad to have local government partners that share that vision and to share the stage with them here today.
This is such an exciting news for people living in the Northwest BC, and I want to thank everyone involved for their tireless work and advocacy to make this work a reality. So once again, thank you so much to all the mayors, the advocacy group, and as well the co-chairs for all your work. Another champion that you have in your community is MLA Jennifer Rice. She's the MLA for North Coast, as many of us would know. And I quote her because she inspires me all the time with her passion when we speak about the RBA. She said, "This has been the result of so much intergovernmental cooperation and collaboration and persistence with passionate advocates from all levels." So I do want to thank her especially for the work, and as well for my colleague and my predecessor at Municipal Affairs for all his work and guidance in getting us to this place. I know that since I became the Minister for Municipal Affairs, I've had countless conversations with members of the RBAs, and sometimes I go, yes, gosh. So local governments from this area and all members of RBA, that this new funding is really greatly needed. Working with RBA communities to get this new RBA funding in place has been a priority for me, as it is part of our government's efforts to build a strong and sustainable economy in all parts of British Columbia. This new RBA funding will better address the unique infrastructural needs of each community in this large and diverse region as we all continue to grow together in a sustainable way. And I'm so excited to see how BC's Northwest communities use this funding to make real difference for people in this region, which is being reshaped by a new generation of resource development. As I mentioned, I've had numerous conversations with members of the RBA.
I would like to acknowledge that we are gathered here on the traditional territory of the Tsimshian people, the Kitsim-Kalim and the Kitsilas. I would also like to acknowledge my co-chairs, Mayor Attrell and Mayor Pond. I would also like to acknowledge our predecessors as well. Bill Miller, Stacey Tyers, Barry Pages, Phil Germuth, Lee Brain, Chris Olson, Shane Breenan, and everyone else who worked tirelessly to get us to this point. Today is a historical day for Northwest BC. For 10 years, the Northwest Resource Benefit Alliance has been lobbying the provincial government for a resource revenue sharing agreement. In September of 2019, at the UBCM convention, then Premier John Horgan committed to getting a revenue sharing agreement done with the RBA. This led to the Northern Capital Planning Grant, where $100 million came in 2020 and $50 million came in 2021. After the $100 million, the world spiraled into unprecedented times, with COVID-19 putting all focus on the pandemic, with resource and attention put into saving lives. The RBA was parked for over a year. In the spring of 2022, then Minister of Municipal Affairs Nathan Cullen met with the entire RBA in Terrace and put this discussion back on track. Moving forward, September of 2022, at the UBCM convention, the Northwest Resource Benefit Alliance and the provincial government signed a memorandum of understanding to negotiate and get a deal done. 17 months later, many trips to Victoria, I am proud to say that this government has kept its promise, committing $250 million to Northwest BC over the next 5 years. Today, Northwest BC can raise its head again. We can walk a little taller, and we will be able to start building our communities back. We will be able to replace aging infrastructure that we had no ability to replace before. Roads can be repaired, water lines replaced, sewer lines rebuilt, sidewalks fixed, bike lanes made, downtowns can be revitalized, and many other needed infrastructure projects can be done. This agreement is not something to us. It is everything to us. On behalf of Masset, Port Clements, Dodge and Guides, Prince Rupert, Port Ed, Kitimat, Terrace, Stewart, Hazelton, New Hazelton, Smithers, Telkwa, Houston, Grand Isle, Fort St. James, Burns Lake, Fraser Lake, Vanderhoof, North Coast Regional District, the Regional District of Kitimat-Stikine, the Regional District of Balti-Nechako. I say to you, Premier Eby, Tuyuksuk Noon, thank you.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Welcome back to Open Connection. Often, very little local revenue is generated by major capital projects because the developments are largely outside of municipalities or outside the boundaries of communities that are adversely affected by such large impacts. Also, large projects drain resources required to review and plan the proposed projects, whether to proceed or not. Let's return the conversation with MLA Jennifer Rice.
This RBA announcement also includes Haida Gwaii, but I was talking today earlier about the fact that we're facing or have faced a water distribution crisis. We have just nearly avoided a catastrophic collapse of the water pipes. So just recently, we were able to partner with the federal government and put a substantial amount of money together for Prince Rupert to actually fix those pipes. They need to be replaced. They're beyond fixing. Now with the RBA, or the Resource Benefits Alliance agreement, this is sustained funding over time. So the city will actually have enough revenue to maintain those pipes so that 50 years from now, we're not in the same situation we are now, where the entire system is at the absolute end of its life. So this is great news because we have smaller tax bases now in the north. We have smaller communities, and we can't strictly rely on just individual taxpayers or small business taxpayers. We need to reap some of the benefits of the historic industrial development that's happened in the Northwest, and we need to feed back into our communities. So that's what this announcement is all about. In Haida Gwaii, they face similar infrastructure challenges. A lot of the communities still discharge their sewer into the ocean. There's new federal regulations where you can't do that anymore. But however, because of the small communities and population size, to gather the funding needed to do such big projects, such as distributing water or dealing with sewer discharge, RBA funding will contribute to infrastructure needs as well on Haida Gwaii. But it's also important to note that this funding is no strings attached. So a lot of people are used to government grants where it's for a specific thing and you have to, tailor your project into the certain parameters. This money has no strings attached. So what that means is that the municipalities, the local governments, the regional district, they can use the funds in a way that makes most sense for the local communities. And I think that's fantastic. It allows communities to leverage other grants with their annual funding. It allows them to communities to maximize their borrowing capacity if they have to borrow against big projects. Seismic upgrades is actually the responsibility of the provincial government. And we have a particular school in Prince Rupert. Currently, the Prince Rupert Middle School used to be a high school. It is in dire needs of seismic upgrades, and we recently announced $126 million to rebuild the entire school on a suitable location. It's very old, has asbestos in the walls, etc. This is not necessarily a school that we could keep putting money into to salvage. It's really, we really need a new build. And I was so happy that I was able to announce that we're finally going to be able to do that. Emergency department, it really needs some upgrades as well in the Prince Rupert Regional Hospital. So I've been working with Adrian Dix and the Health Ministry to see what we can do to improve the flow, to allow for more privacy for both patients and physicians.
Open Connection will be right back after these messages. And now, from the CFTK-TV studios, this is Open Connection with your host, Robert Pictou.
Earlier this year, opposition Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre sent a letter to British Columbia Premier David Eby asking him to halt the federal carbon tax increase. Poilievre's letter asked Eby to join 7 other premiers in opposition to the April 1st tax increase. In this final segment of Open Connection, Eby responds to the letter, but first, Minister Kang shares how the RBA helps the Northwest.
Today, the Premier, MLA Jennifer Rice, Minister Cullen, and myself, with so many mayors around the RBA region, are celebrating the announcement of the $250 million, $50 million per year for the next 5 years of the RBA alliance. And so the co-chairs have been working on this for many years. Our government really values the work that the RBA region has been doing and really understand that as a resource community, they also need support to make sure that their communities are growing, that their infrastructures and services are funded. I've been hearing from mayors that they need money for roads, for water infrastructure, for sewage upgrades. And as we look at our government expanding on our housing investments, and I know local governments are here to support us in building more housing, that infrastructure is also needed. So when we look at having more families move into the North Coast, the Northwest Coast, and in the RBA region, we have to think about, are there amenities or resources that they need? And we understand that it's a vast region and there's only a limited amount of resources and ways we could tax people. So this is our government way of saying, we hear you, we respect the work that you do, and these are the resources here to help you do that. There has been many communities that I've seen with old swimming pools, with old boiler rooms roads from the 1920s or even back to the 1800s, and they all need some sort of either modernization, upgrade, or expansion, or just totally building new. I won't specifically point out which one because there's many, and it could be a fire station, it could be a community center, a pool, or even the city hall. And so I think this, especially for the RBA region, for the 21 communities here, it'll be very beneficial, and we're looking forward to see how they're going to be using that money to revitalize their services.
Today was the announcement of what's called the Rural Benefits Alliance funding, but really what it means is money from the province for communities that have big resource projects outside of their boundaries, where the workers live in the communities and they're not able to raise the tax revenues from the employer to fund things that make communities great. It's a community center, a pool, an arena, library, roads, all the things they need to fund. They don't have access to that tax base because the employer is outside of the community. So we put $1 billion into cities in the province so they could do nice things for communities like parks and playgrounds and arenas and this kind of stuff. And here in Terrace, they had to use that money to cap the landfill because they didn't know how they were going to cap the landfill. They had to cap it for environmental reasons, and they didn't have the money to do it. And the mayor says, look, we don't have the budget to pave roads here. And when I was over in Rupert, I met the guy who, with a team of workers, spent their Christmas Eve keeping the water system alive, a water system that was built generations ago that threatened to collapse, leaving our port with no water. So the depth of the infrastructure needs here is really significant. And we're supporting cities with direct money, Rupert for the pipes, Terrace for the landfill capping. But today's announcement is about that consistent flow of money over 5 years so they can really do that long-term planning. It was an unusual letter from the leader of the opposition. He suggested that we allow the federal government to administer our carbon tax program here in BC. If we did that with the increase on April 1st that all Canadians are seeing, it would mean less money for British Columbians. We're returning more than the amount of the increase through our program. If we don't do our program, the federal government does theirs, it means less money for British Columbians. So he obviously doesn't understand our program, or if he does understand it, he's just being disingenuous with the request. I'm concerned with some of the suggestions I'm hearing from the Conservatives in British Columbia, everything from allowing unvaccinated healthcare workers in our hospitals, when there's a measles outbreak in Quebec and cases in BC, when they work with kids, babies who haven't been vaccinated that could die as a result. Suggestions that we let the federal government administer our programs, which would mean less money for British Columbians. I hope to have a working relationship with him if he's elected to Prime Minister, but I also hope that he brings his requests in line with British Columbia's realities, the safety and the prosperity of the people of BC, and not just whatever suits his campaign. I'm the Premier of BC. I work in BC. The reality of governing is that I have to work with the facts on the ground and make decisions that are going to benefit British Columbians. Now, I don't live in Mr. Poilievre's campaign office and baloney factory. I live in BC, and I have to make decisions that support British Columbians. So if I make a decision that leaves BC with less money or makes British Columbians less safe, that affects me at the polls, and he'll make decisions that benefit Pierre Poilievre, presumably.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Open Connection. The greatest distance in the existence of man is not from here to there, but the connection from his mind and heart. If we can conquer that distance, we can soar like an eagle and realize our immensity within. I'm Robert Pictou.